But I need to read you a story in the Washington Post that hit last night, is in today's paper. Listen, Democrats have been sharpening their attacks on Republicans over the pandemic, former President Donald Trump, and other polarizing attacks. And now, emboldened by victory in California's recall election, party leaders are seeking to further escalate hostilities ahead of the midterm elections. Beyond prompting a collective sigh of relief in a party reeling from a difficult summer, Governor Gavin Newsom's Tuesday win served as the first test of a revamped campaign strategy that Democrats quietly began assembling weeks ago amid a realization that positive talk about President Biden getting the country back on track had run into the harsh realities of a Delta variant coronavirus surge. Chastened by the resurgence, the difficult Afghanistan withdrawal, and declining public confidence in Biden's handling of the pandemic and other issues, Democrats have gone on offense against the GOP following private summer polling that showed broad and growing anger at the Republican resistance to vaccination, according to Democrats familiar with the discussions who, like others, spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss tragedy. The Quinnipiac poll shows Joe Biden underwater. 42% approval in the Quinnipiac poll, which tends to lean pretty notably towards the Democrats. President Biden's polling average has him down 4 points, 45 to 49. He is in the territory of Gerald Ford in terms of the polling average now, in terms of popularity. Gerald Ford was the least popular president other than Donald Trump in modern polling time. I need to submit a proposition to you. What if Joe Biden's demands for mandatory vaccines at companies of 100 people or more is not intended to get compliance up with the vaccination rate up, but is rather intended to have the effect everyone said it would, which is for people to dig in their heels and not get vaccinated? What if it's part of a larger plan by Biden strategists, knowing that people will dig in their heels and refuse to get the vaccine, that they can then use that headed into the midterms to make people hate the Republicans? In other words, what if this is all part of a larger plan to try to divide people from the GOP, make people hate Republicans so that they turn out in the midterms to help Democrats? I don't like to go there in my thinking, but this Washington Post report and the polling seems to suggest that's exactly what the Democrats are doing. Their internal summer polling shows that more and more people are disdainful of the unvaccinated. It is obvious. It's even to Democrats, it's obvious that if the president of the United States goes out and tells people, get vaccinated or lose your job, or else also you can do testing once a week, what people are going to do is they're going to dig in their heels. They're not going to get it. What if Joe Biden's announcement that he was demanding vaccines, mandating vaccines, was in fact a effort by design to get people to dig in their heels, so that the Democrats could then turn around and blame the unvaccinated and tie them to Trump supporters, because clearly the January 6th stuff is not working. They've been trying since January 6th to tie Republicans to the incursion into the Capitol. It's not working. They continue to beat that drum, but it's not working. Polling shows Republicans are not fully tied to that in voters' minds. Only some are. So the next thing they got to do is tie Republicans to the unvaccinated. Because I'll be honest with you, there is growing anti-vaccine sentiment out there, or anti-vax sentiment. How do I put that? Yes, there is growing sentiment among some. The Biden administration. I know people. It's human nature. I said this yesterday on the show. I know people who were headed to get the vaccine, and then Biden said, you better do it or else. And they're like, screw you, I'm not getting it. That's human nature. It was obvious that was going to happen. Everybody who knows anything about human nature, and politicians and political parties and pollsters know about human nature, obviously knew the moment the Biden administration says do it or else, people are like, well, screw you. Or else what? And now you've got the polling that shows the Democrats intend to ramp up draconian vaccination measures. It's not a coincidence that Los Angeles County imposed mandatory vaccines and vaccine card checks before going into public areas or public arenas after Newsom won the recall. They waited to see if he would win the recall before dialing up the measures. Back to this Washington Post story. Democrats are openly touting vaccine mandates they once shied away from and chastising Republicans who oppose them. They're delivering sharper criticisms of the motives of the unvaccinated, a group that is largely Republican, and spending much more time talking about Trump. A year after Biden won the presidency on a promise of uniting the countries, Democrats have embraced a far more divisive set of talking points that cast their opponents as a threat to the country. The contrast is going to be clear as we move into 2022, Democrat National Committee Chairman Jamie Harrison told reporters Wednesday. The contrast between folks who are card-carrying members of Trumpism and folks who are Americans through and through and are fighting for this country. You got that? You're a patriot or you're a Trump supporter. You're a traitor to the country if you're a Trump supporter. If you don't get the vaccine, you're a traitor. It's all part of a plan. Ironically, the way to fight back is the way Republicans won't do it. They're not going to go get vaccinated. The people who are resistant to the vaccine aren't going to get vaccinated. So what they will do is they will go into 2022 being the villains for the Biden administration. And I suspect, I have a strong inclination to think that they'll actually overplay their hand on that. I don't think that it helps the Democrats here. Why? For a number of reasons, one of which is it prolongs the pandemic. They will try to blame Republicans. They will try to blame vaccine skeptics. But if Joe Biden demands everyone gets a vaccine or loses their job, and the pandemic continues to run unabated, then he looks even weaker. And that seems to be the case. You know, it's starting to fade in southern states. Florida's down 41%. Northern states are starting to increase their spread. West Virginia, which even the media, even though it's a red state, they've heralded the governor there in his efforts to get people vaccinated. West Virginia has seen a big spike in COVID rates. The media can't help itself. What it should be doing is covering hospitalizations and deaths instead of the spread of the vaccine, because a lot of people who get the vaccine can get COVID but don't go to the hospital or die, which is actually what we want. We don't want them overwhelming hospitals. But the media is so used to focusing on COVID rates, not hospitalization and death rates, they can't get out of the habit. And now COVID rates are going up in the north because it's clearly seasonally impacted by people going inside. And suddenly, it's not going to help them. And are they really going to blame a bunch of blue states where COVID is going up? Blue states that voted for Joe Biden, they're going to see the spread. New England states that voted for Joe Biden, Northwest coast states, Illinois and the like, in the middle of the country, they're seeing the increase. But this is all part of a plan now. This is a very deliberate pattern and practice. They saw Gavin Newsom win the recall and they've misinterpreted the results. California isn't like other states. California is unique. You got to recognize it's unique in its progressive spirit and in how far left it has gone and how the Republican Party itself went nuts and kind of broke apart. Virginia may be getting close unless the GOP saves itself. But California doesn't translate to the rest of the nation. California is exporting Californians to the rest of the nation at a rapid clip, so much so that by the next census, they may very well lose seats in Congress for the first time. And we're only a couple of years in to this past census having been done. But the Democrats have interpreted Gavin Newsom's win there as a way to now put the pedal to the metal, accelerate mandatory vaccines, accelerate lockdowns, accelerate vaccine card mandates, vaccine passports. And there's some polling out there, though, that shows, including in the Quinnipiac poll, that Americans support vaccine mandates, but not by the federal government. They don't want the federal government to do it. They're okay with employer mandates, but not federal government mandates. And when you begin to vilify the unvaccinated, by the way, many of whom have real legitimate concerns for not wanting to get vaccinated, either future pregnancy for young women, or they've got medical conditions, or they've already had COVID, so they don't really need a 2-round shot. A lot of people know those people. I know people who are skeptical and hesitant to getting the vaccine, and I'm very pro-vaccine. But a lot of my friends are skeptical. Many of them wound up ultimately getting it after other members of their family got really deathly ill, but they're still skeptical of it. They don't like the government forcing people into it. The Democrats' heavy hand, they think that just because Californians would be okay with it, and really Californians aren't super okay with it, it's just Larry Elder made it a Larry Elder versus Gavin Newsom race, and Californians were very not okay with Larry Elder. Californians were more okay with mandates than they were Larry Elder, which tells you everything you need to know about why Larry Elder running a big campaign in California probably wasn't a good idea. But this is now part of the Democrats' strategy. In order to win in 2022, they've got to have a villain. Donald Trump is off the stage. They're going to try to bring him back. And if Donald Trump can't come, who is going to be their enemy? The unvaccinated, because polls suggest people are getting tired of them. They will vilify people who are unvaccinated. This is the party of Barack Obama, the man who told his supporters to take guns to knife fights, the man who told Hispanic voters that Republicans were the enemies, the man who told his voters to get in the face of people and yell at them if they were telling lies about Obama, the man who started an office in the White House where you could turn in your neighbor if they were lying about Obamacare. This is par for the course. The media doesn't like to talk about that aspect of the Democratic Party, that aspect of Barack Obama, but it's real, it's documented, it happened, and now they're going to escalate it with gusto and try to make you, if you're unvaccinated, the bad guy, tie you to Donald Trump and tell people, are you going to vote for the Hicks and Rubes that didn't get vaccinated, or are you going to vote for Democrats and help Joe Biden? I think a lot of people are not going to do what the Democrats think they're going to do.